Hello and welcome to the Seer 365 sessions, where we have interesting conversations with people from the Microsoft channel. So what we try and do is to bring people on to talk about a topic that is of interest to many of you and try and learn from each other, which is something that I feel pretty passionate about. And this week, no different. So we've got a really cool guest that I've known for probably too long at this point. Patrik from Thinkmax. So let me just get him on as well. Hey, Patrik.
Hey, Richard. How's it going?
I'm doing very well. And thank you very much for joining us all the way from beautiful Canada.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Thank you so much.
So, as usual, let's start with asking you to introduce yourself and a little bit about Thinkmax.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So my name is Patrik Chavarie. I'm Executive Vice President at Thinkmax. And by the way, just Richard, I was thinking how long we've known, and I guess we're getting older together, though, right?
Yeah.
So to talk about Thinkmax, Thinkmax is a Microsoft partner, and our mission is to help the companies in their digital transformation journey. And so we start with what we call the fundamental, Richard. So is everything around the transactional book of record, also known as the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Systems.
Yeah.
And then as you've stabilized that element, the second element of what we do in our expertise is around the engagement side. And think of the whole relationship side of the business. So it's not only customer, clients, but also partners, the vendors, right? The whole supply chain capability of how you engage, how you communicate, and you document those capabilities. And the third level, as we help companies in the transformation journey, is the whole disruptive side, the disruptive side. Think of the whole digital play, the online channels of how you digitally transact, extend the capabilities of traditional CSR departments, but the whole B2B online experience from content management to personalization to how you interact with your business partners, but also on the B2C side, right? So the consumer side for retailers additionally. So our expertise really lies in those three elements of what we do. And the way we do it is obviously by looking at the business strategies, the whole process, and the people within our clients. And we leverage the Microsoft technology to enable those scenarios to help our clients digitally transform themselves and actually achieve their goals. And that's what we do, Richard.
Thanks, Patrik. So I should have mentioned at the beginning as well, if people have got questions, feel free to add them in the comments section on LinkedIn, and we'll try and get some as they come in as well.
Cool.
So as we were thinking about what to talk about today, you brought up a really interesting topic that I thought would make a really good episode, which is global delivery, because it's an area that we live in a very modern global world. The world's getting much smaller year on year. So tell me about your thoughts on global delivery and how Thinkmax do it, and we can argue a bit about the best way of doing it. But let's
Agreed. I will. So thanks, Richard. So one of the things I didn't mention is because we're located in North America, so Canada and the US, there's a trend that we've seen in the market right now, and the whole merger and acquisition play. And I think it was actually pre-COVID, but the COVID kind of accelerated that transformation, right? So the M&A has been quite active. And so more and more what we saw from the three levels of engagement, from the fundamental to the engagement to the disruptive side of commerce, we see companies now that are preoccupied or that have all interest in multiple regions across the world. And what they're trying to do, Richard, is to standardize their processes, their methods of deploying technology to help them through the process. And so what we see now is the companies were looking for an innovative way to say, okay, I've got all my business applications like Dynamics 365, and then how do I create a core approach? How do I document things, and how do I scale upon that method? And so we've kind of developed I feel a unique play, and I know that when we were discussing together, you did that in the past as well, but we've kind of branded the Core Inside approach. And what the Core Inside approach is that when clients are looking to have a global deployment of Microsoft Dynamics 365, we have to think differently. We have to try and standardize, and a lot of our clients are asking us for best practices, right? Standardizations, the methods around those components. And so the Core Insight, what we're trying to do, and what we successfully do, I should say, is the whole definition of the first project, the first site that we work on. we have to have guiding principles. And the first thing we ask Mr. Client is that, are you looking to standardize procedures? Do you have shared services like finance or HR? And so we're trying to define that model if there's a fit that clients want to standardize across the world. And so the core insight method, what it does, Richard, is the first step that we do once we've understood that the client is compatible with the philosophy of that, is that we look at what can we do from a structural organization? What is their structure, corporate structure? How are they set up accordingly? We also look at the intercompany capabilities, and it's not only intercompany from a general ledger standpoint, it's also the operational side, right? So, and a lot of the scenarios that we're seeing today is through the acquisitions, even North America and in Europe, right? So you've got a company that sells an equipment that's got components of that equipment can be manufactured in the US, some components can be in Canada, and some components in France. And so when you start looking at the intercompany, you have to think of how do you design that core component of the intercompany, not only in the GL, but the operational side. So once we looked at the organizational structure, we've also looked at the intercompany model. We also looked at the common data. So think of, and it's an easy example, right? GL chart of accounts. Okay, that sounds simple to have one chart of accounts, but it really simplifies consolidation reporting capabilities. And so the standardization of the data model is quite essential. Even the way we define an item, we define a bill of material, a routing is important, right, Rachel? So we're trying to figure out how we're going to build the standardization by analyzing the requirements across all entities and how we can streamline those components. The other element that we have to look upon is the processes, right? The documentation about those capabilities. And so it really is an interesting approach to doing the core model, right? In some ways, it's not an easy task because you've got to pull from a change management standpoint, Richard, which you know about. We have to pull people, the key players across the world, across the organization to help us build that core capability around that. And so the core, once we build the model, we want to test the model in a first site phase one, right? And I should say also that the core is good when you've got multi-geo play, but it's also good when you've got some multi-phase deployments, right, Rachel? So you think of in the US, the company has 20 production sites. And so the core model also facilitates those deployments, accelerates those capabilities. And so once you've got the core that you've defined across the 5 pillars that we've talked about, then you want to implement the core in the first site. And you know that you will tweak that core for sure, because there's always some element specificities that you may have missed, but that the mark is to hit 90% to 95% of all requirements in that core model. Once we've stabilized the first site and that first core model, the cool thing about that now is the side approach. So now you've successfully deployed, you're live, you've stabilized the core. Now, how do you leverage that core accordingly now if you've got a US company and you start deploying that into France or in Europe? So now you've got to think about the regulatory constraints, the local reporting requirements, the taxation process, which can be quite different, right? And so the side approach now takes the core and it goes to the next step of the core. The core, once you take it to the new company, and let's say in Europe, you want to be able to do a fit gap on that core. You want to be able to say, what are the nuances and differences? And we have to accept that each company, though there is a fundamental core of 90% of best practices, everything is standardized, there's still that 10% that we have to understand per site, per region, per company, in order to enable those distinctive value of that company. And so the side approach, what it does is we take the core, we do a fit gap, we look at reporting requirements, tax requirements. We also looked at approval processes, everything that is related to the operational and the financial side. And once you've done that, then you're able to quickly accelerate the deployment of the core, which is now site specific, if you want, Richard, around that component. So it is a methodology by which that if you take a step back, we focus on the core. We also have the ability to measure the fit gap of that core to the site specificities, and then you just deploy that same model across the board. It's really cool, and it works, by the way.
Yeah. And do you look at grouping as well? So one of the other things that we've seen with global requirements gathering or deployment is not just head office North America. We're going to deploy to 10 countries around the world, but these 2 countries do manufacturing. These 2 countries do I don't know, sales or whatever.
For
But
distribution, of
grouping,
service.
grouping those. So it's exactly the model you're talking about, but then kind of the next level down, if you like, of actually grouping the requirements for those types of companies as well.
So the answer is yes, Richard. And here's what's cool about it. So you're right to say that I kind of explained that there could be one core. But the reality is there could be more than one core. So,
Yeah.
and a core could have shared services, right? So there could be a core just for finance and a subcore for manufacturing, subcore for distribution, and subcore for servicing, right? A lot of the equipment manufacturing companies now are looking to expand the customer service approach. So you're absolutely correct that you can expand on a multi-core approach by business model, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, and it's more the model than the geos, right? So I do understand that there's taxation, there's reporting differences. I'm just thinking of France, where the statutory reporting to the government is quite different than we would have in North America or in the UK or any other country. And so, but it's you've got to think of the processes, and then it's the whole elements around that component. So you're right to say that the manufacturing, the distribution and servicing are elements that you look at the operational processes, and then the site specificities would be, again, as I said, the local components of
Specific
that company.
for those countries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
And then
cool.
do you see customers looking to build that capability internally as well? So not just relying on you as their
Yeah,
trusted partner.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I heard a term that so shout out to a good buddy of mine called Chris Huntingford, who did a LinkedIn post on this recently, which is why it's top of mind, where the center of excellence model,
yeah,
but he's now referring to it as a center of enablement,
yeah, yeah,
right? So rather than just having this kind of godlike team that have to be involved with everything, it's empowering. Which I thought was a really interesting,
yeah.
kind of a different way of looking at that function. Are you seeing customers going down that path as well of more getting internal muscle?
Yeah, so I would say great minds think alike. So yeah, the center of excellence is a critical thing. You're absolutely correct, Richard. So when you look at the core insight approach, it's a philosophy methodology of designing and deploying an application. The next question to be asked is, how do companies and clients want to deploy that model? And you're absolutely correct that sometimes they rely on partners as accelerators in the process, right? So that's what we do as a company, as a service provider. We're actually a catalyst for that component. But then some clients, they, as you said, want to take the full ownership of the system. And I think it's a philosophy that we embrace. Let's take a step back, Richard. When we do, let's say, a simple project, we're quite focused on knowledge transfer by osmosis, right? So we want to help the clients be able to understand the design decisions that we take. We are there to help clients understanding the potential of the application around that realm. Richard, are you still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Just give me a second. I seem to have lost you, and we always test these things in there, and I won't see you anymore. But um, and so the knowledge transfer is helping clients take ownership in a simple fashion to do a small diagnostic on how they do things that we've designed accordingly. But the next step to take it is the center of excellence, is exactly as what you said, is where we take that knowledge transfer and we take it to the next step. And so we're trying to build and help clients, and we build a methodology and an approach, Richard, to do so, is to help our clients become mini Thinkmax, if you want, right? So mini catalysts in there by which that they will be able to have a dedicated and autonomous team in order to support implementations, support the evolution of Microsoft Dynamics 365. Because one of the things that I do believe, Richard, and I'm trying to help clients see that light, is that often they think of phases, and I think that we should think of digitally transformation as a continuous improvement program, right? It's almost like manufacturing. It's a continuum. It's not just a phase one, phase two process.
No.
And so the evolution side is quite important. And so this ability of designing, of implementing, of center excellence is all around activating, making the client autonomous, and owning the core and the side approach, right? Does that make sense? So in other words, we have to train them, certify the people in there. It's almost like helping them implement a PMO framework in some ways, right? Because now they become, they have a business analyst, they have to have ability of doing extensibility with the Power Platform. They have to be able to understand the Azure cloud instances. And so we're trying to activate not only the technical competency, but also the functional business side of the equation. And the real success lies on when you combine this with the core insight. You've got to think now that your clients that are looking to do a lot of M&As, we've seen that more and more, right? So the core insight combined with the center of excellence will facilitate a company that says, okay, we're purchasing a company, we want to integrate that company in 100 days.
Mhm.
Okay, Thinkmax, you will help us on the critical component, but now they've got the autonomous team to start take charge of that system, understand the core. When you do the almost like the site specificities again, when you buy a company, you do a fit gap on that company based on the core, and then you can quickly mobilize a team and implement that capability in that center of excellence. So it's a good thing when you've got multi rollouts. It's a good thing when a company has got an M&A strategy also, or just a good thing when a client wants to become autonomous, right?
Mhm.
And again, there's not, as you asked earlier, there's not one way of doing things. I think you've got to be open-minded to, okay, the center of excellence is a framework, but what is the ultimate goal of our clients in that way, right? And
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you. And what I've seen over the years is the customers that take ownership, so exactly what you were just describing then, end up with a better outcome.
absolutely, I
There's
agree
an
with that.
old Welsh proverb that my father still uses, which is roughly translated from the original God's language Welsh into English for you. Can't do it in French though. Is something that you grow is better than something that you buy. So clearly, you need to buy in some of those skills that Thinkmax can offer. But having that internal team, you end up with a much better. In my opinion, you end up with a better outcome. So
Yep.
completely see what you're doing.
Here's one thing I want to mention also. So we've talked about the core insight approach. We talked about the center of excellence. But here's what's interesting, and we've successfully done that, Richard. We've seen a lot of companies that the phase one, for many reasons, system is outdated, they've got pressure, they did a merger. There's a time to value factor. And so what the clients are trying to do is say, we got to go live phase one ASAP. And I'm sure that many of all of us have heard that component, right? So you can also decouple the core insight to the center of excellence approach. And I'll explain that. So if a
Mm.
client's focus says, okay, I want to go with time to value, I need to go live in 10 months or 8 months, whatever the scope would be in that case, then the first thing that we would do is we would work with the client at defining the core model, right? But in that scenario, because the time to value is so essential, we're not activating the center of excellence yet because we're just trying to focus and help the client in a osmosis knowledge transfer approach, if you want, right? So they're able to support that. But let's say that we've done the 8 to 10 month project and we went live to that, then we can have an intermediate phase before we start rolling it out or looking at the other sites specificities. And so we're able to decouple the core insight for a time to value approach, but also having that decouple approach for the center of excellence. And so some circumstances we've done the go live and they've got, as you know, the champions, or how do we call them, the pilots of the system in there. But now we take those elements of a natural standard play into the center of excellence level. So it's an intermediate phase, call it the phase 2 or the phase 1.5, where now we take everything that system is stabilized. Now we go to the next step. We get people certified. We go back to that whole center of excellence approach. And what we do, Richard, is that it's not because we've activated that, we also have to help clients. And one of the things that we saw that really works is once you've activated the center of excellence, Thinkmax is still involved at supporting the first site evaluation, but it's almost like we're dropping down from from 50% involvement to 25% to just 10% when we need it, right? There's still some elements that Thinkmax has value in supporting those weird scenarios or components or integration elements in there or any place that we have to do, right? And so it's really an interesting point that whenever you implement the center of excellence, you also have to think that we will be there until the client is ready to take ownership. And we've seen pressure on resources, Richard, right? There's resources are scarce. You're trying to look for the best talent right now. And so we also understand that that can take a little bit longer to get there. But if a client has the full team, then you can understand that we're going to, our participation in this project will drastically go down over time.
But I
So
think that's where Thinkmax are able to really help, right? Because so in the scenario saying where they're buying somebody, they bought a company, bringing it into the wider group. Your and Fabio's made a interesting point. I'll just put that up. I was talking about your models, your industry models that you've got expertise in. You're able to do these things a lot faster than if they were working with somebody that didn't have your expertise and access to those models. So thanks for that, Fabio. But we worked with a company last year that was sold by their parents, and they had to get off the parents' SAP system, and it was super quick, because it's a multi-billion-dollar business, big business that got sold, but they needed to come off SAP onto Dynamics because they have good taste in these things. In, I think it was like 8 months to go from multi-billion-dollar business, big business, 8 months to go from platform selection, SI selection, and implementation in 8 months.
Yeah.
Right. So, but doing that in the traditional model without working with somebody like Thinkmax would be next to impossible, right? So, great.
And actually, Richard, so we talked about the core inside approach, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the core we start from scratch. And I think that's what Fabio was commenting about. Is you're correct to say that Thinkmax, for instance, has done a pre-core, if you want to call it, for the manufacturing space, more specifically on discrete or mixed mode manufacturing. So we have let's say a Thinkmax core model, an accelerator, if you want. We also did it for retail, CPG, and service-based organization. And so whenever we go into the first sessions of the core definition, and you know what, Richard? I mean, every system today is based on best practices, right? And Dynamics 365 is based on that. Now, the one thing that I often think is client thinks that there is one best practice. And for a procurement process or for manufacturing, there could be 6 or 8 practices, and they may have nuances by industry. And so you're right to say that going in, we've got the whole Think Ready accelerators that we've built that facilitate those core conversation around what is a procure to pay process or an order to cash. And there's always some nuances in there, but what it is that design, as you just mentioned, we're trying to compress the design so we focus on data conversion, which is not simple. No. We're looking at if there's system interfaces in there. But so you're absolutely correct. So we can reduce the effort and the time required to design the core model because we've got the Thinkmax, Think Ready accelerators. Absolutely. And that's a good point from Fabio. And that you can combine that with the time to value. I'm telling you, Richard, more and more. I don't know what's in the air these days, but remember the projects 12 to 14 months. There is still those projects because some organization have got some nuance and complexities in there, right? So one of our clients, to give you an example, is a large organization, multi-site, multi-country, and 95% of their transactions is on the e-marketplaces or on marketplaces. And so just there is a full-fledged component of complexity, right? So how do you interact with the Costco, the Wayfairs, all those elements in there. So there is some projects that still take longer, but if you're able to streamline or simplify that component with the accelerators, it's pretty cool. So you can shape things differently, and you can almost have like a pre-core to core development or deployment, Richard. Correct.
But I think the benefit, well, one of the benefits that I think about that model, having that pre-core and then core and then deploying it out, is the amount of time you're saving means that you can focus more on what makes that business different.
Yeah.
Right. So that manufacturing company, most manufacturing companies, I'll make up a number, 80%, using the Pareto law, will be very similar to every other manufacturing company. It's the 20% that makes them different. So it means that you can focus more on that 20% and add value to them faster, so they get the ROI faster as well. So I think your model is a really good one, without being super prescriptive. Because that's the other problem, right? Where some people have built industry accelerators that are super prescriptive, where that's exactly what you're getting. If you can't have anything that isn't there, right? So I think the model you've got is a really good one.
But Richard, there's a model. So you talked about the secret sauce, and I like that, right? Something that's specific, gives a competitive edge to a company, and I think we have to be open-minded to that because, again, best practices are there to do the fundamental processes. But I think in today's market, companies have to think differently. What's that secret element that's going to make it could be on the procurement side, on the supply chain side, could be on the on the sales side on a B2B scenario or a B2B2C scenario, Richard, around that. But there are some clients that are asking us to be quite prescriptive because they think of a NewCo. Company just spun off something. They need to have something in place quickly. So there are some times that we can go with a Think Ready Finance accelerator, if you want, Richard. And we're going to go quickly, and it's going to be dirty, but it's going to work, right? And then what's interesting about the Microsoft Dynamics 365 is it can really structure best practices, but because of the model, the way it's been built, you can continually improve the processes, right, as you're in production. And so you can remodel that. You took a core, prescriptive core, you went live in 4 months, 5 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. But now a little bit later, we start, thinking about the uniqueness of the processes and the client requirements. So we have to be, and we've done both, Richard. There's no one way today to implement Microsoft Dynamics 365 for both the ERP, the CRM capability, or the customer engagement, and even the commerce side of the business. There's no one way anymore, Richard.
Very cool. Well, look, we're at time, and I've. It's not a surprise to me that we were able to talk for this long without stopping. I always enjoy speaking to you, Patrik, and always take it as an opportunity to learn for myself as well. I hope everybody else has enjoyed the last 25 minutes or so. It's a fascinating topic that I'm sure lots of people will have thoughts on as well. Before we go, though, I just wanted to say that if you are looking to partner with a partner in North America, especially in Canada, you should absolutely reach out to Thinkmax. Easily one of the best partners in the world, Inner Circle partner,
Yes,
and all that kind of good stuff. So if you want to reach out, please go onto their website, reach out, speak to the team. I know I love working with the Thinkmax team, so I'm sure you will do as well. So with that, Patrik.
Yeah, Richard, just wanted to thank you for inviting me also. I think I want to be back. I love these sessions. I think it's fun. And, there's no one way of doing so. I like I'm almost like a think tank working with you on this session. So I want to thank Seer 365 for enabling us to be on this session. Thank you, Richard. And I will be back if you invite me again.
Well, you're always welcome. And I think that'll be a Thinkmax tank.
I love it.
Think Tank Max. I don't know, something on there. Right. Thank you very much. And I hope everybody's had a good time as I have. And everybody has a great rest of your week. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. And bye-bye. Bye.